Beginning of this crisis, I thought Europe would have a much harder time bouncing back than the U.S., just because the U.S. tends to be more nimble and flexible. And that hasn't been the case at all, and that's largely because the U.S. hasn't gotten a handle on this virus, whereas most of Europe has done a much better job on that.
Greene is a leading economist on both sides of the Atlantic. She captured great attention and praise in 2008 when she correctly predicted the Greek government bailout, since she's advised the British Parliament on Brexit, in addition to governments and central banks of the US, Europe, and Japan.
So anything related to retail and entertainment has been hit really hard, and that doesn't just go for Europe, that's across the board. But so airlines, certainly travel, has been hit really hard. A lot of European countries, Greece comes to mind, has tried really hard to allow tourists in to try to claw back some of the tourism revenues that they lost at the beginning of the summer, without that much luck, though, I should say. So tourism, anything related to that, or travel, has been hit really hard. Restaurants, cinemas, those kinds of entertainment businesses have been hit particularly hard. What's done really well through this, because there have been some winners, are tech companies. And there I would say the biggest tech companies are actually based in the US, much more so than Europe. So Europe's benefited much less from that. And then also, and this makes sense, healthcare and pharmaceutical companies have done pretty well off the back of this, which is exactly what you'd expect in the face of a global pandemic. And there, Europe does have some bigger players. And I would say, actually, Europe's recovery is looking a lot smoother than the US's. And I certainly myself did not predict that going into this crisis. But I think a huge piece of it has been virus management. So Europe has done a much better job of really kind of smashing the curve, not just bending it. And so they've been able to open up much more without a massive spike in new cases. There are some new cases coming up, but in the U.S. we've had a totally different experience. And it's not so much to do with economic policy, much more to do with virus management. This EU recovery fund that they've put together is a really historic deal. It's mainly historic politically rather than macroeconomically, though. It's really important because embedded in this deal is a series of transfers, essentially, which the Northern European countries went out of their way to try to avoid in the last crisis. So it does show some kind of solidarity here. The recovery fund is 750 billion euros. And that is split between 390 billion euros in just grants, so that's free money, and then 360 billion euros of loans, low-interest loans. Yeah, so when this crisis really hit and Italy was the epicenter, there was immediate talk of export controls from France and Germany of PPE and food, which I found really alarming, and I know a lot of Italians did as well. The Commission stepped in and brokered a compromise so that didn't happen, but just the fact that that was on the table showed kind of the cleavages that you had within the Eurozone, certainly, if not the EU. I think it may have been anti-European sentiment rising in some of these countries, but I also think that it reflects, the shift in politics reflects bigger moves. So usually the UK has represented kind of the opposition within the EU. It has been sort of the frugal country that wants all these opt-outs. Well, now the UK is leaving the EU, so it's not there to play that role anymore. And so I think with Merkel making a change, the Netherlands ended up stepping in to kind of play this traditional role. And that's been quite different than having Germany play that traditional role. I think Merkel's change in view about how, it's in Germany's best interest to actually support these countries did quite a lot to diffuse anti-EU sentiment or anti-Euro sentiment as well. And so initially in this crisis, Italians in particular felt really bitter that no one was showing them any solidarity. Even though you had a different country, you had the Netherlands really leading the charge, but there were these frugal four countries, Denmark, Sweden, Austria, and the Netherlands. I think just the fact that France and Germany were showing solidarity did a lot to diffuse anti-Euro sentiment. And so we're coming out of this with the political discourse completely changed from where it was at the beginning of the crisis.